as a way of making us think about the kind of future our young people will have.
So we got people that don't have, teenagers that have hardly nothing going for them. Got enough faith to make a $1,000 bow.
I guess we should talk about Nicaragua first.
What's happening, film fans? This is Movie Talk with Aaron Hunter. I'm Aaron Hunter, and this is another episode in my ongoing series on punk cinema. For the film under discussion today, we've got a classic, a cult classic. It's been put out as a criterion. It's a film that's infinitely quotable, that anyone from Gen X who's into movies, probably anyone who's into punk music and movies, anyone who's into Los Angeles movies knows about this film, loves this film, cherishes this film. It's a bona fide classic, which first of all is not what I do a lot of on this channel, but also, that being the case, can it still be considered punk? Let's find out as we consider the 1984 SoCal punk rock cult classic Repo Man on this episode of What Makes This Film Great. Hey everybody, before I get into a discussion of the film, just a quick reminder that if you dig what I'm doing here, you can support me on Patreon. The link's in the description. Repo Man is a 1984 film that was written and directed by the British filmmaker Alex Cox. It features cinematography by the kind of groundbreaking, definitely influential and fantastic DP Robbie Mueller from the Netherlands, who worked with Wim Wenders, Jim Jarmusch, Peter Bogdanovich, and a host of other great filmmakers through the years. And it was edited by Dennis Dolan. And it features kind of two soundtracks, one by Tito Lariva and other members of his band, The Plugs, which was a kind of Chicano-influenced punk band from SoCal, from LA, that was contemporary with a lot of the bands I talked about in The Decline of Western Civilization, although they don't figure in that film. And he and various members of The Plugs and other members of that community put together this wonderful sort of Mexican-influenced surf punk soundtrack. This soundtrack, to me, was so influential in watching Repo Man the first few times that when I hear like that wonderful SoCal blend of Mexican surf punk, I just immediately think of Repo Man because of this soundtrack. In addition to that music, there's a ton of songs from the Los Angeles punk scene. There's Circle Jerks, there's Black Flag, and there's a ton of, I think, Suicidal Tendencies show up in there, and a ton of other punk bands who provide the soundtrack for this punk film. The cast includes a fantastic Harry Dean Stanton. For me, in some ways, this probably isn't Harry Dean Stanton's best role, but it's probably the first film I saw when Harry Dean Stanton as a performer made an impression on me. So whether I see him in Paris, Texas, or whether I see him in small roles from the 50s and 60s, this great little performance he has in Cool Hand Luke, to me, he's Bud. Harry Dean Stanton is Bud, spouting off about the repo code.
I shall not cause harm to any vehicle, nor the personal contents thereof, nor through inaction let that vehicle or the personal contents thereof come to harm. It's what I call the repo code, kid. Don't forget it. Etch it in your...
It's also sort of the first really great performance from Emilio Estevez, and it features a host, a plethora, a gaggle of, a gang of great 70s, 80s, 90s character actors, some of whom will be very familiar to you. Tracy Walter, who everyone will know, plays Miller. Cy Richardson has an amazing performance as Light. Fox Harris plays J. Frank Parnell, the scientist. And Olivia Barish plays Layla, who to 16-year-old me was like all that. I'll just leave it there. And everybody, one thing to keep in mind about Repo Man is that everybody in the cast is on their A game. I mean, they're just, I don't know what the set was like, but they just seem to be having so much fun into this. What probably appeared to a lot of them a silly little weird ass movie. They just all bring it. And you see that in every single performance. Even the weird, like super blonde secret agent guys seem to be having a ton of fun. And that elevates the film. It's a great film, but those performances and the sense of commitment and fun at the same time elevate the performances, thereby elevating the film. So you really have a mix of old hands, seasoned crew, newbies, Alex Cox's first feature film, working together to bring this vision, I don't know what this is, to life in the most kind of magnanimous, joyous way, which is important because it's an incredibly cynical film. It's a film that has no sacred cows. It's a film that takes the piss out of anyone and everyone in the film, alluded to by the film, who might not like the film. This movie is a giant fuck you to everyone the filmmakers can think of, and yet it's at the same time buckets loads of fun. It's totally punk. What's the film about? It's two stories, an A story and a very prevalent B story. The B story actually kicks off the film, that are interwoven and dispersed and separated and pulled back together and pulled apart again by a variety of conflicts, wrong turns, cul-de-sacs that seem to keep knocking the film off track, but the power of the A story and the B story keep sort of pulling them back together. The A story concerns Otto. Otto's played by Emilio Estevez. He's a young punker. He'll later describe himself as a white suburban punker, although the film is not set in the suburbs. We don't see his home. We see the interior, but we don't see the exterior where he lives. Plus, a lot of LA is kind of suburbs anyway, isn't it? It's like a giant suburb with pockets of city. Hey man, I've been there. I know what I'm talking about. And Otto's best friend, Duke, played by Dick Rude, has just got out of jail. I heard that Dick Rude's quite close friends with Alex Cox, or he was at the time anyway, and appears in several Cox films. And he was actually intended to play Otto, and saw an interview with him where he talks about how heartbroken he was that he didn't get to play Otto. And basically, once the powers that be started to line up to produce the film, including Mike Nesmith of the Monkees, and Universal started to express interest. They're like, we'll back this film, but Otto has to be a star. And Emilio Estevez had been in The Outsiders, and his star was rising, and of course he had Sheen family connection. And so they got the go-ahead to do the film, but only if they cast an up-and-comer, and they landed on Emilio. Emilio's agent didn't want him to be in the film either, apparently. They thought they were trying to position him as what he became, a kind of Brat Packer, you know, leading man in the Brat Pack films of the 80s. They had to use some sneaky backdoor channels to get the script to Estevez, but they did eventually, and he agreed, and Dick Rude becomes Duke. And Duke has just got out of prison, and at a party celebrating his release, Duke steals Otto's girlfriend, Debbie. And Otto, despondent, distraught, takes some beer, walks off. He's pissed off at everybody, doesn't know what he's gonna do. And he meets Bud, Harry Dean Stanton, Repo Man extraordinaire. And through a variety of sort of machinations, Otto is pulled into the world of the Repo Man. And in case you don't know, repo here means repossess. And what they do is when people are late paying their car payments, Repo Men show up and take the car back. This is like the least punk job on earth, right? taking people's car in Los Angeles, where regardless of how cute, you know, North Hollywood is, or Santa Monica, or wherever it might be, and you can walk the boardwalk or you can go through the hills, you need a car to get around LA. Definitely if you work, definitely if you're on the fringes of society and you're the kind of person who might be late making your car payments, you need that car to get around. And Repo Men come and take it from you. Like, this is a bastard job. So already I think there's some punk energy here because there's a paradox. We have Otto, the punker, he's singing his TV Party Tonight as he walks along alone, making fun of corporate America.
We're just dedicated to our favorite shows. Saturday Night Live! Monday Night Football! Dallas! Jefferson's! Gilligan's Island! Flintstones!
And yet he becomes the man for corporate America. The Repo Man enforces the rule of law of corporate America. And that paradox is important, and that's part of the film's send-up of everyone in the film that I mentioned, but it's also part of the film's sense of fun. Like, nothing is sacred, no one here is a hero, and because of that, everyone here can be criticized, made fun of, had the piss taken. And so, the story of Repo Man is the story of Otto becoming a Repo Man, a punker becoming the man. The B story, which is very important, is about Dr. Parnell, who has stolen something from Los Alamos in New Mexico, and he has it in the trunk of a Chevy Malibu, and he's driving it towards Los Angeles. And a lot of people are looking for this car. And we find out very early in the opening scene that whatever it is in the trunk is dangerous.
What you got in the trunk?
Oh, you don't want to look in there.
Give me the keys.
I love that special effect. Yeah, it's gonna show up again a couple more times in the film, and it's just so, like, even in the 80s when this film came out, it was low budget, and this is a low budget film. I think they made it for under $1 million, around $1 million, which is a lot of money, but in 1984 money, that was already not very much money. And so, of course, as you can probably figure if you haven't seen the film yet, the Malibu is going to be reported as in need of repossession, and it's going to show up on the Repo Man's recall sheet. And because of the contents of the trunk, the repossession value of the Malibu is $20,000, whereas most of the time they're getting $500, a grand, a couple grand for the cars they repossess. The Malibu's $20,000, which in the world of the film is a lot of money. And so this is where the B story and the A story connect and diverge and connect and diverge again, because the Repo Men start looking for this car. And that's basically it. Who's gonna find the car? Is anyone gonna find the car? Who's gonna get the 20 grand? The Repo Men at the yard where Bud works, the Helping Hand Acceptance Corporation, which is an awesome name for a repossession yard. And that includes Light, that includes Miller. Miller's not really a Repo Man, he's kind of like the yard man. Have some competitors, namely the Rodriguez brothers. They're a little slicker, they're a little cooler under fire, but it's made clear the first time the Rodriguez brothers appear that Bud and company know about them and don't like them.
Cool car.
Uh-oh, the Rodriguez brothers.
Motherfucker just flipped you off.
Roll the window down, roll the window down.
¿A dónde vas, pendejo?
¡A chingas tu esposa!
Watch it, motherfucker!
Hey, fuck you, pussy, punk!
Holy shit!
Want me to take him?
So of course, the Rodriguez brothers are also looking for the Malibu. So you've got Bud and Otto and their whole group looking for the Malibu. You've got the Rodriguez brothers looking for the Malibu. You've also got the United Fruitcake Outfit, UFO, which is some sort of organization that seems to believe in and investigate conspiracy theories. So at the time, and still to be honest, Los Alamos and anything having to do with Los Alamos is sort of laden with conspiracy theory, and they believe that the trunk has aliens in it. The film also implies that there's some sort of nuclear device in the trunk, and it never actually answers the question, but there's something that glows as we've seen. One of the people working for UFO is Layla. Otto meets her in one of my favorite little moments in the film.
Hey!
In his Eldorado,
Hey,
why he was only 5'3",
baby, you need a
girls
ride?
could not resist his. Pablo Picasso was never called an asshole.
Pick it up!
Look at you, you pick it up. You know yourself you were wrong.
Well, what were they doing out in the middle of the street?
They weren't in the middle of the street. That's not the middle of the street, that's the corner.
Some people try to pick up girls.
Go on, you pick it up.
What?
You pick it up.
No way. You still want to ride or what?
No, I don't.
Subsequently, Pablo Picasso was never called an asshole.
One day I'm going to show this movie to my son. He's 11. He's not quite there yet. Maybe when he's... I mean, I think he could watch it now. It's got some swears and things like that, but I don't think he'll really dig the vibe of it until he's maybe 16 or 17. But I've got a couple movie quotes that I drop on him every once in a while, and he doesn't know they're movie quotes because I just say them. And so when he leaves his like crap lying around, which 11-year-olds do all the time, I'm like, pick it up. Pick it up. You're the one that put it there. You're the one that left it there. And he looks like, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. And one day he's going to sit down and watch Repo Man and go, ah. I also do it when he tries to trick me and I tell him, I'm not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. And he'll get that one day too. Anyhow, I love that at the end of the film. And the film is full of coincidences and overlaps in storylines and all kinds of things that make it unbelievable, but that happens so naturally and with such confidence. This is a very confidently made film that you just go along for the ride. Anyhow, Otto meets Layla, and at first he thinks she's crazy. He just wants some hot sex with her, which 16-year-old me understood. And eventually he sees that the Malibu is worth $20,000. He remembers Layla's story. He starts spending time with her to try to get information from her. He's a horrible boyfriend. He's a horrible misogynist. The film is maybe playfully misogynist. There are a lot of women in the film, and a lot of them have powerful agency, but they're often shunted aside in favor of the men, including Layla, who kind of comes and goes as the story needs her. But every scene she's in is great, in part because she has one of those sort of high-pitched, annoying voices that I would often not love, but it fits her role. So Otto, I love it. And I love her performance. So UFO is looking for them. And then there's some other government agents who seem to be tied to UFO or seem to be spying on UFO and using their information. It's never completely clear. There's the woman with the Michael Jackson glove metal hand and her dopey but efficient blonde agents. And all of these people are looking for this car. And this is what the film is. And just the intersections of these groups as they try to find the car. And there's one other group that doesn't know anything about the car, although they end up with it briefly. And that's Debbie and Duke and their new friend, Archie, who spend their time in the movie doing crimes. And they pop up in the most wonderful places. And I want to talk about that a little bit because one of the best things about this film is its use of sight gags. Repo Man is a sort of feast for cinema lovers who love the way the frame and blocking and staging and coincidence can all be married together to never let a gag go, never let the opportunity for a laugh go. So the film is full of sight gags. And I mentioned the gang doing crimes. We get appearances by them like this.
Anymore. I mean, I've seen men stabbed. Didn't mean shit. You know, I've seen guns too. They don't mean shit. But that's when you gotta watch yourself. Here, I'll handle it, pal. Try to settle down. Okay. Have a nice day. Or night. Night, day, doesn't mean shit.
Wasn't that Otto?
Otto who?
So you spend that whole scene watching Bud rant about guns and the life of the Repo Man and all this stuff, and you're totally absorbed in it, and he's talking about guns, and then they're buying this beer, and then they walk away, and then of course the criminals pop up. And this kind of joke goes on and on. And they're hilarious. You get the air freshener jokes that run throughout the film. So the first time we see the air freshener,
Find one in every car. You'll see.
there's one in every car. There's one in every car. But then we get this cut. And it's hanging from the biker cop's motorcycle windshield. It's awesome. And we're gonna keep seeing air fresheners throughout the film. So not only does the film make these sight gags throughout, it commits to the sight gags throughout. One of my favorite ones almost didn't happen, and it's when Otto goes with Cy Richardson's light. So he gets most of his training from Bud, from Harry Dean Stanton's Bud, but he also gets some training from Light, and this leads to two of my favorite scenes in the film. And one of them is this little sight gag where they've repoed a car, and Otto's looking around the car to see what's in there, and we get this scene.
Do you like music?
Sure.
In that case, you're gonna love this. I was into these dudes before anybody. Partied with them all the time. Asked me to be the manager. I called bullshit on that. Manager the pop group? Hey, ain't no job for no man.
Now, apparently, the scene wasn't scripted exactly like that. They were just supposed to throw the package out the window, and that was the end. But the producers came to him and said that we need to pay off that gag. It's not enough. I don't know if it would have been enough without the insert. But Robbie Mueller said, I don't do inserts, apparently, according to the producers. And they had to actually take a second unit out and film that gift full of money. And Mueller was apparently pissed off about it. If you don't know what an insert is, by the way, an insert is generally a close-up, usually of a prop, and they're in movies all the time. They're used to like give a little direction or specificity to an action or an event or an occurrence. So if someone comes to their kitchen table and they find a Dear John letter, and then we get a close-up of the letter, that is an insert. When someone goes to dial a phone or read an email and we actually see it, like the hand holding the phone with the email, that's an insert. So there's an insert of the package with the money in it, and that's a sight gag, and it's great, and it pays off so well. Mueller didn't like it. I'll come back to him in a moment though, because part of what makes Repo Man so good is his camera work. And of course, there is probably the best known best remembered, most beloved sight gag of the film, which is the endless stream of generic products. So throughout the film, we get these white cans, white boxes, white tins with the blue stripe along the bottom and the blue, usually lowercase text that just says beer, gin, or London dry gin. Or in one of the best examples.
They're right. I do want your money because God wants your money. So I want you to go out and mortgage that home and sell that car and send me your money. You don't need that car.
Food. And this goes throughout the film, and then we get to see a ton of it during the shootout near the end of the film when guns are going crazy. We're in a convenience store and all this generic food just kind of blows up all over the place. Apparently they actually wanted products in the film. They wanted product placement. This is a funny thing to think about, the way films come together and take on meanings because of limitations. And none of the companies, they particularly approached beer companies, and none of the companies they approached thought that this was the kind of script that they wanted to do product placement in. They had a hard time raising all the money they needed for this film. And, you know, this is a time, early to mid 80s, when product placement really started to ratchet up as a way to supplement a film's budget. And they couldn't get the product placement. And they found out that Ralph's, this is generic food from Ralph's, which, if you don't know, is a California, I think Southern California, but maybe all of California, supermarket chain. It's all over the place. And this was Ralph's generic packaging. And apparently they had a warehouse full of after-date food and drink that they legally weren't allowed to sell anymore. So the filmmakers got that food really cheap, and that's what they end up using in the film, and it becomes a signature of the film, so much so that I still laugh every time I see that. Like, I know that there's gonna be all this generic stuff, and somehow I just forget, or whatever it is, and he goes to his parents' house. He just eats the food. Come on, man. It's awesome. I mentioned Mueller's cinematography. The film is cynical. The film, you know, pulls no punches. The film is very light-footed and light-hearted. And the cinematography grounds it. And the cinematography is really, like, you almost don't notice it because you get so caught up in the gags and the dialogue and the ridiculous plot. But the cinematography and Mueller's lighting, his framing, the way he uses color and lighting contrast within a frame is incredible. And it's not flashy, so it doesn't call attention to itself. But when you notice it, it's really a joy to look at. Look at this scene where Bud and Light are in two different cars, and they're talking about what Bud's going to do if he gets the Malibu and gets the money. And just look at how this shot is staged and framed and lit.
See, that motherfucker only thinks I don't know what's going on, Light. As soon as I find that Chevy, I'm going Indy. I'm gonna buy myself a tow truck, a couple of pit bulls, and run a yard. Sit around and watch everybody else do the work for a while.
No way you can do that on 20 grand, man.
The hell I can't. As long as you got good credit. My credit is spotless.
Dennis Dolan's editing is also fantastic in this film, and the editing figures into some of the sight gags, like the air freshener on the cop bike. But the editing's also used in ways that are sort of non-linear or asynchronous, that are both very efficient in the storytelling, but also just kind of add to a scene's intensity. One of my favorite parts is when Otto has his first real day of training with Bud. And this is where like Harry Dean Stanton just begins to shine. We go throughout the day and there's this kind of breathless effect. It's not quite as intense as Breathless, but in ways it's more intense because we're spanning more time. And what we get is like a stream of exposition, a stream of expounding from Bud about what a Repo Man should do, what a Repo Man is, and what a Repo Man's code that he should live by is. And it actually takes place throughout the day in different locations, but the way it's cut makes it seem like one continuous speech. And it works fantastically to add intensity to the speech, but also to imply that, I mean, they're taking speed, right? That Bud never shuts up. And it's one of my favorite parts in the film.
Helps if you dress like a detective, too. Detectives dress kind of square. People think this guy's a cop, they're gonna think you're packing something. They don't fuck with you so much.
Are you?
Why, what?
Packing something.
An asshole gets killed for a car. Guys that make it are the guys that get in their cars at any time. Get in at 3 a.m., get up at 4. That's why there ain't a Repo Man I know that don't take speed.
Speed, huh?
Jesus Christ. I never broke into a car, never hotwired a car, kid. I never broke into a trunk. I shall not cause harm to any vehicle nor the personal contents thereof, nor through inaction let that vehicle or the personal contents thereof come to harm. It's what I call the Repo Code, kid. Don't forget it. Etch it in your brain. Not many people got a code to live by anymore. Hey, look at that. Look at those assholes over there.
And that leads me to one of Repo Man's great gifts to society, which is 90 minutes of almost completely quotable. This script is so funny and so clever in its dialogue and so quotable and so ridiculous, and it's little snippets, it's long speeches like Bud's. There's just so much going on. I love this little scene when the Rodriguez brothers light up a joint.
Think you can find it now?
Now, how come this junk is worth so much? What's in it? Drugs?
Hermanos Rodriguez don't approve of drugs.
Rodriguez brothers, the Rodriguez hermanos don't approve of drugs. It's perfect, right? Miller gets a ton of great speeches, including a long one, I won't play the whole thing, but whose thesis is this.
I do my best thinking on the bus. That's how come I don't drive, see?
You don't even know how to drive.
I don't want to know how. I don't want to learn, see? The more you drive, the less intelligent you are.
I don't know how many times in my life I've said that. You know, we need to know this more now than ever. The more you drive, the less intelligent you are. In a film about Los Angeles where everybody drives, in a film in which everybody drives. It's awesome. Miller also gets this great scene, and this one is a little bit hard to watch at first because it's got some homophobic language. But what works about it and what makes it so good is the response of the men. Because you think they're going to respond one way, which they do, but not for the reasons you think. And it's this one.
Repo Man don't go running to the man, Marley, and Repo Man goes it alone. Yes, sir, Bob.
Just like John Wayne.
Damn right, just like John Wayne. What's wrong with that?
Greatest American that ever lived. John Wayne was a fag.
What did you say, Melissa?
What? John Wayne was a fag.
The hell he was!
He was too, you boys. I installed two-way mirrors in his pad in Brentwood. And he come to the door in a dress.
You're fucking nuts. That doesn't mean he was a homo, Miller. A lot of straight guys like to watch their buddies fuck.
They do?
No, I do.
Yeah.
Don't you? Damn straight I do.
The hell he was. A response, but then you get all these guys saying, man, everybody's a little bit like that. And it's really, really cool. And for 1984, I mean, not that this is a mainstream film, but that is sort of unheard of. And it's a great scene. One of my favorite scenes where you just get a snippet of the dialogue through the noise is when Otto goes out to repossess a car with light. Now, Bud has said in his speech, you know, the Repo Man never carries a gun. And so Otto was sent to repossess this car, and things go south, and this happens.
Holy shit! Holy fucking shit! Mike!
Right! Right! Open the door! There's a maniac in. What are you doing?
Jesus! Open the door! What are you doing? What are you doing? Open the door!
You're still on the job, white boy. Get in the car.
Open the door, man! Open the fucking door! Open the door!
Get in the car!
Jesus Christ!
The job ain't over, white boy. Get in the car. It's so good, right? When Duke gets hit in the Mexican standoff shootout, when all the generic food explodes, and Otto sees him and he comes over to him and he's like, hey man, and we get this.
I know a life of crime led me to this sorry fate. And yet, I blame society. Society made me what I am.
That's bullshit. You're a white suburban punk, just like me.
Like the protagonist of the film, I mean, maybe this is Otto's moment of realization. Maybe this is the moment that allows him to transcend. But it's also just a great line of, it's cynical about the cynics. You know, and this is where this movie piles one layer of sort of trenchant societal criticism on top of another and keeps going so that it never allows anything to stand still for fear of it as well getting torn down by the movie. There's also this great scene.
Hey, Debbie, watch this.
Oh dear, what a shame.
Come on, Duke, let's go do those crimes.
Yeah, let's go get sushi and not pay.
Another line I've quoted a million times, you know, let's get sushi and not pay. Also, Jennifer Balgobin, who plays Debbie, was another of my 16-year-old. Like, if I could have just hung out with Debbie and Layla while they were making this film, I think 1980s me would have had the time of his life. Just hanging out, being around. That's all I'm saying. There's so much more to talk about. The film makes fun, like nonstop is making fun of Reagan's America, televangelism with Otto's parents having given all their money to the televangelist. It's making fun of, like, at its heart is sort of deconstruction of 1980s capitalism. It's making fun of the government. It's making fun of conspiracy theories. It's making fun of people who make fun of conspiracy theories. It's rife with a punk fervor, but also realizes more than any of the other films we've watched so far that punk itself needs to not be so serious. Right? Whereas Jubilee is really like worried about the dangerous path that punk might be going down. Repo Man is more like, come on, man, don't take yourself so seriously. Fuck this. You're just a suburban punk like me, right? So there are no sacred cows that this film won't take down, but it does it. And what makes it so good is its light touch, its sense of humor, these wonderful performances, this amazing cinematography, and a kick-ass 1980s Los Angeles punk soundtrack. It should be said that Alex Cox himself, to me anyways, embodies, or at least 1980s, 90s Alex Cox embodies a strong punk sensibility. He's probably best known, if not for Repo Man, for his next film, Sid and Nancy, which is kind of like a punk uber text regardless of what some people think about it being like good or not good or fair or unfair. It's one of those films that you have to sort of, you know, pay tribute to in your punk journey. But the two films he made after that, Straight to Hell and Walker, are fantastic punk films. They're both set in Nicaragua and Central America. Cox was very invested in, interested in, as were a lot of punkers in the 80s, the situation in Central America, in particular in Nicaragua with the Sandinistas and the Reagan administration's funding of the Contras and the sort of death squads that were getting money from the US government secretly, allegedly, and so on. It's all come out with Iran-Contra. And Cox traveled down there. He actually had, in an early draft of Repo Man, had seen set in Nicaragua. They couldn't get the funding for it, but he ends up going down there in real life and making these two films, Straight to Hell and Walker, which are, one's completely fictional, Straight to Hell, and one, Walker, is the most punk biopic you'll ever see. And they're loaded with anachronisms, they're confusing at time, and they're very political films, like Repo Man is, and they mask their politics through their unconventional storytelling, their unconventional film style, but it's there. And I think for all of Repo Man's ridiculousness and all of Repo Man's cynicism, underneath it, and this is one reason why I keep coming back to this film, there is a very lefty, trenchant lefty political analysis of Reaganomics, which is still around us. I mean, the government of the UK just implemented a massively sort of Reaganomic budget. Reaganomics, consumer culture, consumerism, right? Feeling 7-Up. It's the first lines in the movie almost. Someone singing a jingle. Someone, Xander Slosh, the bassist for the Circle Jerks. Feeling 7-Up, right? And this I think is what makes Repo Man, no matter how popular it is, no matter how silly it is, its heart is the beating heart of a punk rocker who sees that the world is stupid and ridiculous and could be better. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you've made it this far, you must like the video, so hit the like button. And I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button as well. And if you're really feeling the love, head on over to my Patreon page. Throw me $1, maybe $5, to help keep the channel going. There'll be a couple more videos in my punk cinema series, and then I'm going to keep on going after that. So I'll see you next time with more punk cinema. Until then, keep watching movies.